Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we're going to talk about everything from scanners to stubborn designers on Light Talk.
And this is Ann in San Clemente, California.
And this is David in beautiful Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers!
And sister.
Hey. Hi, everyone. What episode number is this? This is like 78,
78,
right?
yeah.
78.
Wow, 78 episodes.
Impressive.
Well, we thought we'd start to give everybody an update on our listener demographics. I think the last time we did this was last year when we had about 12 people listening to us. So we thought we'd update everyone. And right now, believe it or not, at the end of September, we have 57,000 downloads. And we actually broke a record in September. We actually had 5,000 downloads just in September.
Jeez.
We think it's because of Ann.
It is not.
Yes, and we do, because the people that I repel, Ann pulls back in. So thank you, Ann.
You are too nice. I'll take it. Why not?
You know, one of the things that always amazed us is how many people listen to the show around the world. I mean, it's still inconceivable why people in the Faroe Islands would listen to us. But indeed, the Faroe Islands, once again, make the list. So I'm going to have Stan quickly list all of the 65 countries that actually waste their time listening to our program. Go, Stan.
Okay, I'm going to try and perform this. Sit back and just get something to drink, and I'm going to go as quick as I can, and I hope I don't flub it. Here we go. The United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Singapore, Norway, Denmark, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, Sweden, Netherlands, Japan, Russian Federation, Nigeria, Ireland, Finland, United Arab Emirates, France, Austria, New Zealand, Italy, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Spain, Poland, Romania, Brazil, Ukraine, Estonia, Iran, the Islamic Republic of Mexico, Israel, Kuwait, Greece, the Faroe Islands, of course, Croatia, Guernsey, Bangladesh, China, Saudi Arabia, Lithuania, Vietnam, Bulgaria, Moldova, Republic of Myanmar, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Egypt, South Africa, Czech Republic, Latvia, Zimbabwe, Argentina, Taiwan, Cambodia, Serbia, Republic of Korea, Malta, Guadeloupe, Curacao, Luxembourg, and Puerto Rico.
Nice work. Amazing.
Could you repeat those, Stan?
Not today.
We love all you people everywhere. That's amazing.
Yes.
We do. I can't believe it. We're a global village. My university keeps talking about internationalizing itself. Well, they got to catch up to us.
You know, we should have like internships in all these countries.
Ooh.
You know.
Now we're talking.
Slow down, man.
Anyway, welcome to all of our global listeners, and thank you for listening to this crazy show. You know, Steve has our first listener question today.
Did I hear Egypt in the list?
You heard Egypt.
You did.
Okay.
I said Egypt. You
Robert in Egypt says, you guys never talk about scanners. Who do you like? Robert, the problem is I don't really like scanners at all. So, let's do a little walk through memory lane here. I guess you could call the Roscoe IQ a scanner. That's a mirror. It flicks around. It moves. Yeah. So that's the most popular scanner-like device today. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, ChromaQ made the moving mirror. And certainly scanners that are produced today, Elation, American DJ, Chauvet DJ. So there's not a lot of high-end I don't find a lot of high-end scanners out there. You know, the first really popular scanner that I worked with was the IntelliBeam. The IntelliBeam came in two flavors, the 700 and the 400, the 400 being a short arc lamp. And, of course, that was ultimately replaced by the CyberLight. Lightwave Research, which became high-end systems, also made the IntelliSpot, the TrackSpot, and the TechnoBeam. The other scanner that I have used, and it's been a while, was the Comar Robot. But right now, by far, the big guy on the block right now is Claypaky. And they make the Spheroscan.
Spheroscan.
Now, I've got a problem with the Spheroscan.
It looks like a robot. It looks like that robot from Lost in Space. It really does. Go ahead.
I got to look this up now.
Steve, you've been accused of being a Verilight guy, and so I thought you would have at least played with the VLM.
I was going to get there.
Oh.
But that's
Okay.
all right. The M was a moving mirror. It was short-lived. It was designed for a very specific purpose for a very specific client. So I don't think it was one of their most shining moments, but certainly Pink Floyd liked the M. Mm-hmm. But the Sphere-Scan, my problem with the Sphere-Scan is the listed MSRP on it is $12,000. So that's a little steep. You know, the advantage of the Sphere-Scan, and David actually brought this up, it does look like the little robot. The reason it looks like the little robot is they built it so you could embed it into the stage floor with just the scanner sticking out the top.
That's why. I didn't know that.
It's good for outdoor use. The other thing about the Sphere-Scan, which you might like, is the mirror goes on turning endlessly beyond 360 degrees. So it creates an absolute original swirling effect. And you can adjust the speed of that. If you put it up to maximum speed, it is 250 RPMs. So, you know, if you're mathematically challenged, that means it's about 4 revolutions a second. So without a doubt, I mean, it's a 1,200 watt lamp. It's certainly very bright, very powerful, more so than any of the scanners that came before it. It has a 13 to 34 degree zoom on it. It's got a rotating gobo wheel with 6 gobos. It has a fixed gobo wheel with 8 gobos. It has a rotating prism, a fast 16-blade iris. It has linear frost. It's CMY. There's a 7-color wheel addition to it. So again, I think that's it. But I think scanners seem to me to have kind of gone to a very low-end product right now. Now, David, have you used the Sphere-Scan?
I haven't used the Sphere-Scan. I used a lot of scanners. You did forget the PAL 1200, which was a very large scanner made by Martin. I used to use the Martin PAL 1200 quite a bit. And it was a large light, a little larger, if I remember correct, than the Cyberlight, which I loved. And I love the Cyberlight. I still love the Cyberlight to this day because it has great gobomorphing. But my all-time favorite scanner is a scanner that was, I believe it developed in 1989 by a company called Chameleon. And you guys know what it is?
No.
It's the Telescan. The Telescan had a lot of stuff in it. I think it even had a film loop. Besides the rotating gobos and all that other stuff, it had a film loop. And if anyone wants to see Telescans in action, go check out the DVD of the Live Genesis The Way We Walk concert. That concert was designed by Mark Brickman, and he has these Telescans on angled wires, and they track up and down, and they're used throughout the concert. You should also check out Mark's design for the Pink Floyd Division Bell Tour, which is on a DVD called Pulse. This is his famous design with the giant screen in the back. Yeah, that really narrows it down for Pink Floyd. And the huge arched proscenium. He uses like 36 of the Mark IV Telescans. They're 2,500 watts apiece. And he said that was the only light that could cut through at 90 feet. Yeah, there was a 90-foot throw there. So, you know, those are terrific lights, but they weigh a ton. They're about the size of a refrigerator. I am not kidding you. They have real thick bodies. So I love scanners. You know, they're fast, you know, but you are limited with the range because the mirror can only reach a certain part of the stage. It does, you know, it's not like a moving head fixture.
I have a question about the PAL 1200 because when I think about it, I maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but I thought it was one of the first fixtures I ever saw that had
Shutters.
That's
right.
Remote-controlled shutters. Did it?
Yes, it had remote-controlled shutters.
I'm looking at their website. It's actually there, and it does say internalized motorized 4-shutter blade framing system. I had never seen that before in my life.
Yeah.
That was the first time.
The problem with the PAL 1200 is that, you know, once you hung them, you don't want to move them because they sort of fell apart.
Oh, yeah.
So they were real beasts. But do yourselves a favor. I'll post it on the Facebook page. Those suckers are huge. How about you, Anne? Have you used them?
Yeah, in grad school we had a couple of Cyberlights and something else I can't remember, but it did take 2 or 3 of us to lift them and hang them.
They are big. But, you know, they're great at box booms. If you put them on their ends, like you sit them up, sort of like the sphere scan. And they were wonderful box boom lights. I used to use them in box booms a lot.
I do remember one, I was working in a roadhouse in college and I was up in a spot tower and there was one sitting on its end at the bottom of the spot tower and it caught fire while I was up there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so all was fine, but we took it outside and sprayed it down. But I don't have much. I don't use scanners that much. Mostly I work in theater, and I do agree that they are faster than moving heads, but I find that, like Steve said, there aren't that many high-end ones, and I find I can do what I need with moving heads rather than scanners, with the exception of IQs, which definitely in smaller spaces I recommend because it really helps you when you don't have follow spots and things like that.
I did use a bunch of cyber lights on the one industrial show I ever did, and man, they were awesome. And particularly for like fast changes and really real drama, I just really enjoyed them. But they were heavy. I didn't have to lift them.
When I used to work as an architectural lighting designer for Bose Lighting Design in Houston, Texas, we did a lot of high-end million-dollar homes for usually athletes. And I once designed, the athlete wanted 2 cyber lights in his hallway.
Wow.
So we actually put 2 cyber lights in his foyer. Oh, I loved it.
So he could have a ballyhoo when he walked in, that idea?
Well, yeah, and we had a haze machine in there. I mean, it was
my God.
amazing.
I
Yeah,
love
it's like
it.
walking into a disco. So first I said, we use the telebeams, but he said, no, I want cyber lights. I said, okay, cyber lights, you got it.
Oh, that's what we had in grad school. A couple IntelliBeams and a Cyberlight. That's what we had.
Okay.
Amy in North Carolina writes, as an LD, what are your must-haves in your Pelican case? Well, Amy, I don't know that I'm so helpful because my first response was nothing, because as a lighting designer, I typically don't have a Pelican case, and I don't mean that disrespectfully in any way, but at least I haven't done the LD on the road for rock and roll concert stuff that maybe my colleagues have here, so I'll let them talk. But I was thinking, again, about your question, maybe you mean like an assistance kit, like what must your assistant have? Because I have suggested to some assistants that do a lot of international travel to use a small Pelican case, because I use a suitcase because I travel or used to travel a lot with it. So Pelican cases can be great if you're doing a lot of international travel. And then it's nothing fancier than all the stuff that's listed in my book.
You have a book?
Assistant Lighting Designer's Toolkit. I get a plug, yay.
It's a toolkit, not a case.
Yeah, that's right.
That's different.
But it's Post-its, it's highlighters, like all that usual stuff, a hole punch, a box of Kleenex, like those Advil, like those things are what matter to
drugs.
me as a lighting designer.
Yeah, I need the drugs right on top, by
Yes,
the way.
right on top. Advil,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And then
Pepto-Bismol.
Pepto, yep. Yeah, my poor students have learned that too many times. I ask them and they don't bring it. I ask them again. They need to learn to bring it. But my other thought was maybe your question means, what must your master electrician have in their Pelican case for you, And so I've always learned, I'm not a master electrician. I don't claim to be one, or a production electrician either way, but I know that they often bring every color they think you love as a lighting designer. So they'll bring extra of everything that's in the scrollers if you have scrollers. And of course, this is a show that would have conventional stuff in it, right? But, they make sure they have extra gobos that are your favorites and gobo holders and things like that. So Amy, I don't know if I'm answering your questions right, but that's what came to my mind.
Well, I have a toolbox, and Anne touched on it. So when I go do a show at a LORT theater or somewhere around the country, I take my little office with me. So I've got my notebooks, my pads, pencils, pencil sharpener. I take a little clock so I can keep up with the time. But I take a portable office, and I'm just sitting right there. So, I'm not taking tools with me or things like that. But I am going to be in the theater for a while, so I don't want to be saying, does anyone have a stapler?
Right.
Does anyone have a hole punch?
Right.
Have you got a paper clip? Can I borrow a pencil? So I think that's probably not a good idea. I do have my own headset, because what I have found over the years is usually as the guest lighting designer, they give you the worst headset in the building. So
I would say with Steve's answer, if I don't have an assistant, then I do bring one of my mini kits that has all that stuff in it.
So if you have an assistant, do you also have them read your book?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I know when they haven't, and I know the things they've forgotten. So, yeah, I say go back and read it again. Just because I wrote all that down for a reason. So I think it helps, and I always suggest that's, they don't have to be the top assistant right away because often they're learning if they're one of my students. But I recommend that they read it because it's like day by day stuff and things like that. Like there's a whole appendix with hundreds of things that should be in the assistance kit and stuff like that. So yeah, I find it useful.
Eve in Oregon asks, I heard about multi-console networks. What are they and why should I care? Well, I'm sort of dealing with that myself right now. My institution, we are now completely networked. And there's a really nice bobblehead Fred video about lighting networks. I'm going to put it up on the Facebook group for next week. But apparently, the great thing about it is all your consoles can be interconnected. You can be using two consoles at once to have one person programming moving lights, one person programming conventionals. I use it to run our exterior lighting on our building. We've got a PC sitting down there with the Nomad on it, and we run show control. And I've also realizing, too, is that, you don't really need a light board to run a show. You just need a light board to program a show. So if you're running, there's sort of ways to use the network to do that, sort of like what theme parks do. So I think all of us are in this networked world, and getting our heads around how it works really matters. In fact, the whole world's is getting networked. So in a sense, I've only worked with one. I've only worked with the ETC net, but I'm getting used to it, and I think we all need to learn about it. Have you guys used any networks?
I didn't have much to say. I just would say that I had used them when we were doing, I think it was Wicked, and we had projections on a Grand Ame and lights on a Grand Ame. Everybody was sort of networked together. And it was sort of a new thing at that time, but it was great because then you could have different worlds. So lighting had a world and projections had a world, but you could choose to be sort of programming them separately, and then you could tie them together when you hit the go button, so that was kind of nice.
Yeah, we did a show 2 years ago where we used these automated follow spots, the ones that you remote control, and we had a GO and an ion. And on the ion, the designers determined that all the follow spot cues will be the point cues between the whole numbers. And so as we were going through the show, the lighting designer was doing their work with their programmer on the GO, and the spotlight designer in this case was working with another programmer on the ion, and they were networked together. So all the cues were going in at the same time into one show file. And in fact, another use is my light lab, for example, runs a Nomad, and I don't have a thing with encoders in there. So they were just using the screen interface. And so it's not really, you need to get your hands sort of get better at moving that light. So I called ETC and I said, can I take my Ion programming wing and plug that into my network jack, and it will show up on the network, and he goes, yeah, that's all you got to do. Oh. It's almost too simple. You just plug it in, it shows up on the console, and you basically do the programming from that. It's sort of like getting the idea that these devices are not separate and discrete. Right? That they're all available all the time in the same place, just how you use them. You do have to be careful, though. I will say this to Eve. In our building, we've assigned certain DMX universe ranges to different theaters. So, for example, the main theater is there. You don't put a universe number in. It's just that you normally patch. It all goes into 1. But my office is 51. And the exterior lighting is like 91/, and the black box theater is 51/. So if I patch a light, and I forget to put the right universe in first, I'm bringing up it happened the other day. My electrician walked in and said, "Are you playing with your lighting console?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm working on this show in my office to do a color demo." And he goes, "You need to patch that into 51/ because you're bringing up lights in the theater."
Oh no!
So there is a little bit of a danger in that, in terms of really understanding how the network works. You can't just jump in that car and even I've learned this before, but I forget. So I'm patching these lights and I forget my office is 51/ whatever the DMX start address is. And now we put labels on all the DMX widgets because they've been programmed to be a certain range. So there is a certain level of learning. So I think, Eve, we're all going there, and it's time to start learning it.
Well, I think Ann touched on it. I mean, there's 3 types of kind of common networking here. There is console-to-console networking, which she described very well. The thing to keep in mind is that you can have two consoles there working with two different people programming, and then you can migrate that whole, when one person leaves, it's still the same show file. So you could be doing projections, you could be doing moving lights, you could be doing audience lights. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but for the Australian Olympics, I believe it was 32 Grand MAs running in concert for the opening ceremonies down there.
Wow.
So you got console-to-console networking. You also have console-to-fixture networking. So what you want to imagine there is, do you really want thousands of DMX lines running backstage when you can have one network line running back there and you get down to one cable? The other thing I'd want to say is console-to-devices networking. And Ann, I think, touched on this, or maybe Stan touched on it. That is probably the most common lighting network. And that allows your console to talk to different devices, right? A visualizer, a media server, show control. But it also does something else. One of the most common devices found on a lighting network is a DMX processor. So as your show grows in size, I just did a show with 72 universes. So as the show grows in size, a lighting console simply does not possess the processing power to facilitate that many DMX channels, all crossfading at the same time.
Yeah.
So most desks use a distributed processing where the desk sends raw data over the Ethernet to an external box that then processes that into DMX. And then you run that over, I don't know, ArtNet or some server. So I would say multi-console networking is really important, just because it's with DMX and with, you think about LEDs, how many channels does it actually take to run your cyc? I have the show line 640 bars maybe, and the 660. If I run the top and bottom on that thing, it's something goofy like 700 channels to control all that. So I mean, you've got to find a way to handle this, and networking is a very good way to do it.
You are listening to Light Talk with Steve, Stan, David, and Sister Ann, and we can just call us the Luminous Group today. And Light Talk is sponsored by...
Well, it's been a while, but Pet Sweat of Japan is at it again. It's 2 a.m. The show is over, the truck is packed, and you are hungry. But what to do? Always the innovators, Pet Sweat of Japan, working hand in hand with IHOP, bring you 3 new tasty selections from the Hungry Crew menu. The Sushi Pancake, the Flirt With Me Smiley Face Pancake, and the Big Bowl of Syrup. The Sushi Pancake is a tasty blend of raw fish wrapped in a whole wheat pancake. Add a big splash of blueberry syrup and you have the perfect, let's call it a night meal. For only 50 cents extra, you can get a side of bacon. As a stagehand, you work night and day. You never have a free weekend. Let's face it, you have no life. Where's the romance you long for? Perhaps you need to try the Flirt With Me Smiley Face Pancake. Order a stack of 3 tonight and start your speed date. If the first pancake is unresponsible, just stick a knife in it and move on to number 2. Finally, stagehands do some tough physical labor. You might need an energy boost after that long day at the hall. Well, then order up the Big Bowl of Syrup. The name says it all. It's a big bowl of syrup and a spoon. Not so hungry? It comes in cup size too. In a rush? Get it in a to-go cup with a straw. Pet Sweat of Japan and IHOP. Always something good in the kitchen.
Big bowl of syrup.
Oh, boy. Do they have a sumo pancake? All right.
The sumo pancake.
Now, back to Light Talk.
Okay, for today's Let's Talk About segment, someone asked me the other day, very casually, I think we were in a car driving somewhere.
Was it a Tesla?
No, we were not in my Tesla. Oh, and speaking of my Tesla,
Where's the pig?
well, there's a real problem because Elon has just been charged
Elon's in trouble. Yes, he is.
Elon may be going down, so my Tesla may be worth $37 in a few months.
You may not be able to get a spare battery, David.
But unless you paid cash for that sucker, once they bankrupt, it's yours.
So I don't think I'm going to be working for SpaceX anytime soon. But getting back to what we were talking about.
There goes your lighting job on redesigning the Tesla interiors.
I know. I mean, one of my students the other day said, I really thought that was cool. You never know. She was very impressed. But it looks like it's not going to happen.
Well, you could do it for free. Like you said.
I can do it to my car. I'm going to just hang some flashlights in the damn thing. Right? Go. Anyway, we were talking about what happens when you go out and do a show and the house equipment sucks.
Well, that was blunt.
This usually happens when you're working in a theater you've never worked in before. Because when you start working in theaters, after a while, you know that the house equipment may not be the apex of equipment, and you'll be able to expect it and adjust for it. But sometimes the electricians don't exactly give you all the right information. In most cases, this does not occur because they will say, oh, by the way, forget about using anything in the box booms because the light travels 20 feet and stops. So it's not a good light. But what happens? You're going to have to make adjustments when you are surprised with bad house equipment. So, guys and gal,
I'm here.
Have you ever experienced anything like this? And what sort of adjustments do you have to make?
For me, it's not so much that the house equipment sucks. It's that they're not right for the photometrics, or the front of house is all the wrong photometrics.
Yes, they're like 50 degrees, right?
Yes. So lighting designers out there, if you don't know photometrics, please learn it, because that is the key to your entire career right there. So if your high sides aren't bright enough, it's because you didn't do your photometrics right? But I found that, you'll go into a house and, yeah, like you said, David, it's like a regular 300-seat proscenium, and it's got a bunch of 50 degrees, or it's got like 10 26s and everything else is 50s or something like that.
Well, of course.
And it's terrible, so you have to double up on your fixtures a lot. That's what I'll do. Like if it's going to be too dim, like say it's supposed to be a 19 or a 26 from the front of house, and you have just a bunch of 50s for some sort of texture wash or something, I'll put double 50s going to the same area, so then you're doubling the lumens, and I guess cut it down. Wasn't it Theron Musser who always said, if you're using shutter cuts, you haven't done your work right? So sometimes you have to punt if the equipment isn't right, because we don't always have the luxury of renting from a rental house or something. But I think it's just making the best of it and being a good sport about it. And the best thing you can do when you're at focus, because you're going to feel nervous about it and you're going to feel like, oh my God, this is never going to work. Because, by the way, you feel that way anyways when you're at any focus. But especially if things aren't working. And the best thing you can do is be a good sport about it. Be like, oh yeah, these weren't right. Oh, here, we tried this. Let's see if it works. The worst thing you can do is bash the house and bash the equipment and bash whoever made that plot that you're working off of, because maybe you're using part of the front of house, because it might be the electrician standing next to you. So you want to be gracious, and through, later interactions, maybe you can throw in a little bit of education here and there. You can say, actually, what I would have put there is maybe not 50s on the booms. I might have chosen 36s because they're so much brighter at center, and, that kind of thing. So you can kind of throw that in without being a jerk about it. So I think the best thing to do is just find the best solutions you can, and then just be gracious. And maybe the second time around that you're working there, you can make some sweet adjustments that are kind of careful and work well without insulting a lot of people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, doubling up happens a lot, I must say, when I hit a house like that. I normally, when I do a show, I normally have straight on front light from the cove, just going across, in areas and nice wash, but being able to isolate areas. And I usually do a warm and a cool, if I don't have a color changing system up there. And sometimes I've had to pull all the cool color out or go to a whole new color and just double up. And the key, though, I think, is being able to think fast and make adjustments fast and not panic. Don't panic. You can always get out of it. And, this whole box boom thing, because I've showed up at houses and the box booms were just a disaster. So what I do now is I just rent 2 more movers. And I put one in the stage left box boom and one in the stage right box boom. And I don't have to focus all those lights, and I can make any colors I want and have an incredible amount of flexibility. That is my insurance policy for bad box booms. And I've been doing that for about 20 years now.
It's in your Colorado rep, your Central City rep.
In my Central City rep, I've got 2 movers in each box boom.
I just tried that on a show, and sadly, the infrastructure wouldn't take moving lights in the box booms, and I was very bummed, and I regretted it through the whole show. Silently, to myself.
So we have a question from Max in Spain. I'm looking for a job as a lighting designer outside my own country. Do I need a diploma in the USA to be taken seriously? Or is good work experience enough?
No diploma needed.
Well, I disagree. And I'm going to tell you what the federal government says about it.
Whoa, the feds are coming.
So, Max, if you want to work in the United States, and you can check this, there's a site that tells you the requirements to work in every country in the world. So if you want to work in the United States, you need one of 3 things. You're going to need a permanent resident card, which is also known as a green card. You're going to need an employment authorization document, and that translates into a work permit. Or you're going to need an employment-related visa, which allows you to work for a specific employer. And that might save you right there, that third one. So if you have a green card, you automatically have permission to work in the country. If you have a green card, then you're probably going to be working toward getting U.S. citizenship. And once you get U.S. citizenship, of course, you can work. Now, you're a foreign national. So you're going to have to obtain a work-based visa. And it's going to have to be sponsored by a U.S. employer. So, for example, the most common is called H-1B, and that's for specialty workers, which is what you would be. The other that might help you is an L-1 visa, and that's intra-company transfers. So if ETC has an office in London, and they want to move that employee to the United States, that employee is moving from one location inside that company to another location. So that's an L1. And for all of our friends in Australia, you need an E3 visa. Now, to get to the point about whether you need a diploma or not, though it's going to depend on your skills and your nationality because we have quotas. All countries have quotas on the number of people who can come in and work, and this is to protect the indigenous workforce. So, if you're U.S. educated, foreign national, with a bachelor degree, that puts you on the lowest category of having favorable employability in the United States. If you are a U.S. educated foreign national with an advanced degree, that triples your chance of being allowed to work in the United States. So, just getting here to work, a diploma is going to make a difference. Is it going to make you a better designer? Maybe, maybe not. But when you start looking at governments and how they allow people to come into a country and work, an advanced degree is going to make a big difference for you.
An anonymous listener asks, I've been hired as a programmer for a show, but the designer has kicked me off the console. Oh, poor Anonymous. I'm sitting behind him, and I know that I would be a much better programmer than him. But no matter my gentle reminders that there is a programmer here to help him, he won't let me. How can I let this designer know that I am a tool to use and that maybe I'd make his job easier?
There is no cure for the disease known as stubbornness.
Yeah, I think that designer's just used to working that way, and he might be more comfortable that way. He might believe he's faster that way because then he doesn't have to talk to you as much. There's no I don't know. I am a big believer in having a programmer because I find that takes too much time, at least in my world, to look at the stage, look at my magic sheet, type the things in, look back at the stage. It's a lot of.
You're taking your eye off the target.
Yeah, exactly. But so I always want a programmer, but there are many designers out there that like to program their own. And they're not union designers because, or if they are, they're choosing to work in places that they can program, because in a union house, you can't program. So I don't know. I don't think there's much you can do, Anonymous. Maybe the guys have something else to say, but I just feel like you said gentle reminders, which is what I would have suggested. Like perhaps at a low stress time, you have a conversation like, hey, I have an idea for how you can do that effect, or, things like that. But I think if you've tried a few times and nothing's happening, then just sit back and earn your paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is like whoever hired, probably there's an entity who hired the designer and who hired the programmer, and that person holds both their paychecks. So perhaps that person could say, hey, I hired A to program and I hired you to design. Now, would you both please take your appropriate roles? But that would be the only thing I can think of to sort of, so that he doesn't get into some kind of altercation with the person.
Well, and it might be like, at least there's, roadhouses around here and things that they have to have one of their crew
right
on the board,
right.
and
Yep.
so, or at near the board or whatever it is. And so if that designer decides to program, that person still needs to be there. The programmer still needs to be there. They just earn their paycheck sitting behind them, and that's just the way things are.
If it's a union house, forget it. This would not even be an issue. We've all worked with slow programmers. I'm not saying this programmer is slow, but it sounds like he's very confident, so I doubt he's slow. And I would, I always consider my programmers almost as co-designers.
Absolutely.
Because I am not a real tech head. I'm not into programming. The programmer's job, number one job, is to know the board and to know that system. And they can get an effect a lot faster than I can. And the programmers that I use on big shows, I mentioned Andy Figueroa last week, these people have design eyes. And I could just tell them, listen, I need a chase using fixtures 2, 4, 12, and 17. I want it medium fast, but I want this sort of random white thing flashing in the middle of it and just keeping the blue palettes. Okay? And they will say, okay. And they'll do it in about probably 30 seconds or 20 seconds,
Yep.
and they'll get at least 80% there. So that takes a lot less time than me trying to figure out, what knob pans the light, what knob tilts the light. So for me, it's a no-brainer, because there's a new breed of designer that are basically designer programmers. In budget-restricted shows, they'd rather just hire one person to do them both, right? And I totally understand that. And my students program real fast, which is great too. But here's a situation where you have somebody already established for one reason or another in the theater. You don't just jump on the board and take over. That's just totally disrespectful. And it's going to go throughout the rest of the crew, and the rest of the crew is going to know, and you're just going to make your life a lot more difficult.
From the academic perspective, I'm lucky here. I have a really strong set of undergraduates, and I will give graduate designers assistants and programmers, or vice versa. Sometimes the graduate student will program for the undergraduate student, and sometimes they don't really know how to use that person effectively. So there is a learning curve for the young designer to learn how to use an assistant. I'll give an example. We're going into a big show. I have a very good student designing a musical. The plot is basically done. Right? The designing was done in a visualizing software, and now it's going into Vectorworks. And it's good enough that they can hang from it, but it's not finished drafting. So I had to say to the student, hey, let the drafting go. You start focusing on rehearsal now. Shift your energy and let the graduate student who's here to help you finish up your drafting. And you could see it was like, you want me to let go of that? It's my thing. Like, yes, let go of that now, because you're now moving into a different phase of production. So I think it's a good point that you said, Ann, that sometimes that person doesn't necessarily know how to make good use of an assistant, an associate, or a programmer, and they have to learn how to delegate and how to open themselves up to that.
Yes.
I think you just have to sit back and just kind of get to know the designer and let the designer get to know you, and probably this will work itself
that
out.
couldn't hurt. Yep, that's a good point, Steve.
It takes a while to trust someone. And, David's got a point. If you come from the world in which you're a programmer designer, which I don't think is such a good idea, and you've got a programmer for the first time, he or she doesn't trust you, and B, he or she doesn't know how to use you to your full talents.
Yeah, I'm the first person to say definitely use a programmer all the time, or board op to program all the time, but I just think people come from different backgrounds, and sometimes it's they just don't know any better, and sometimes it's what they prefer. And yes, it would definitely not happen in a union house, though. So if that person wants to go higher, then they need to learn how to let go.
Absolutely. Hey, you hear that in the background?
I hear it.
That's that incredible Hammond organ solo telling us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
In case you take us seriously and decide to litigate, we now have again the law firms of Phosphor, Tungsten, and Filament who will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
I love the lawyers.
I know, that's why they're back.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and Sista with an AH, right? Coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, San Clemente, and the Lone Star State.
And be sure to tune in next week when we focus on questions from Australia. We're going to talk about time code, LED retrofits, what do Yank LDs really do, and it's a pint, stupid.
All that and the new sponsor, Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Light Talk.